Good afternoon. I'm Rana Dubrow, and I'm one of your CURT staff. I'm here to facilitate this session on the owner's role on a mega project, Merck and Company's MSD Biotech Dublin case study. This project won the CURT 2020 Construction Industry Project Excellence Award in the greater than $1 billion category. Our presenter is Chris Dummermuth, GES Site Program Director for Project Work. Please check out Chris's complete bio that is in our conference app. A couple quick items before we start. If you would please post questions in the chat box. I'll advise Chris of those questions at the end of his presentation. We will conclude the session by 3:20 Eastern Time to allow everyone to go back into the plenary session for the remainder of our conference. I'll also post the link for the plenary in the chat box. And now, Chris Dummermuth.
Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're at today. Basically, we're going to be talking about this mega project I was working on. And the overriding thing that I want to go ahead and make plain to everybody, when we started this project, you do so many technical things on these projects. We had all the design was done on site. We had over 450 designers on the site, along with what we had with the construction folks. But in the end, we had a mindset of building the project, but we wanted to go ahead and get people on a different level too. And along with building the project, you were building block by block a site culture of safety first and quality always. And that has to be instilled in everybody that's part of the project. We were doing something bigger here because what we ended up going in and producing is a product called Keytruda, which goes ahead and works with your immune system to go ahead and target T cells that basically go ahead and your immune system, if they know it's there, can go ahead and attack it and cure the cancer. Your own body cures the cancer. So there was a bigger way of looking at this job than just the technical part of the pipe, the building blocks, the conduit, the cables, and everything else that went into it. There was a bigger reason why we were doing the job. And that's what I'm going to really speak to when we go ahead and really look at this project and how it was a success. Because by putting safety first and the quality always, we ended up getting cost and schedule. And that's really what you want to do, is get the things that really matter done correctly and get it done right the first time. So going on to the next slide here, and I'm hoping I can go ahead and get to this. When you look at this project, it was about, and let me move my deal here over to this side. It's about 40,000 square meters. If you look at the facility, you'll see a QC lab in the front, which is here, a huge warehouse back over here, manufacturing facility was here, and then there's central utilities building back in here. So basically it was pretty much, a lot of it was greenfield, but also too, we gutted a lot of the existing stuff to go ahead and build the manufacturing facility. So we had 4 15,000-liter bioreactors to install. And basically in the end, if you know bioreactors, those are huge, huge bioreactors, all made in the States and shipped to Ireland to go ahead and be installed. So a lot of logistics with this project too. And then, of course, all the support equipment. But when you looked at our blueprint for where all the different equipment came from for this project, it came from all over the world to go ahead and end up in Ireland to get this facility built. From the first part of concept design through OQ complete, we were complete in 2 years on a $1 billion project. We peaked at 1,800 workers on the site, which honestly, you know, the site was busy 24 hours a day. We worked 2 shifts for 2 years to go ahead and get this project completed. Again, like I said, a new QC lab, a new warehouse, a new MS&T lab, which is material science and testing lab, a new utility center. And again, we were about 900 million, a little more than 900 million when we finished. And that included all of the PQ costs to go ahead and get this facility up and running. So it's a massive project. It's just on the north side of Dublin. So we were probably 15 minutes from the airport, which was great because in the end, people could come, be there, be back on a plane at the end of the day and go back home. The tail end of this job, it was about March of 2020 when we actually finished. Almost all the construction was done then, and we were just in the commissioning phase. So the COVID did in fact, go ahead and affect this project a little bit with vendors visiting and different things like that. But COVID was not a huge problem with this project as much as it was for a lot of the other projects that Merck has been doing the last year. So that's sort of what the project looked like and what we were trying to do. But looking at this, we started on an alignment of objectives. What are we really trying to do? How do we promote that this project is bigger than just a technical job? It was so much more about making those commitments to safety and quality, even during the bid stage. The pictures on the right-hand side, we would have town halls. And we had people who had been taking Keytruda, you'll see the picture in the lower part, speak to what the product had done for them. And we put the people through exactly what the Keytruda was, how the process was working, how it works with your immune system. We really wanted them to understand why we were building this job, not just a job to go ahead and come to every day, but being a part of something that was really, really, really special to go ahead and save people's lives. So we changed that perception and made commitments visible. We wanted people to really understand we were making a commitment to going ahead and doing this project right. And we changed the discussion from what was probable to what is possible. And the difference between that is when you look at safety, you could say, well, if you got this many man hours, you're going to have this many incidents. We weren't willing to just go ahead and be satisfied with that. We looked at the possible and said, we are going to make a commitment to zero harm. And we ended up finishing with almost 4 million man hours spent and no lost time accidents on the job. We had 4 minor recordables, but in the end, nobody was off the site at any lost time days. So we made sure the owner, CM, and contractors all had that same commitment. When we talked in the bid stage, we were talking about all these things right from the start. So we didn't have to shift gears when we were looking at what our commitments were going to be. There was early selection of contractors was the key to being part of that building alignment. And we had the contractors in with the designers, talking to them about how do we go faster? How do you support what we're trying to do? And if you understand lean is all about having a pull process. We wanted construction to pull the design. We wanted operations to pull the construction. And we looked at how can we go ahead and really get this project done to go ahead and finish the way we wanted to. So building the project was one thing. But the commitment to safety and quality must be louder than schedule and cost. And in the end, on the technical side, you have so many schedulers, you have so many cost people involved with the job. But the safety and quality people knew that in the end, we were putting that first. And it started with our project director, whose name was Brian Meehan. And Brian really focused everybody early. We were not going to compromise safety or quality for schedule or cost. We were going to spend the money that was right to go ahead and spend, and we were going to spend it before the incident happened. So again, we held town halls on why the project was being built. During the orientations, there was always one person in the leadership team who ended up going ahead and did the first 10 minutes of the orientation. And we talked about the drug so people knew exactly when they came on the site what this whole project was about. And the one thing that was interesting to me, I would normally ask people when I was doing my 10 minutes, if anybody knew anything about Keytruda or had ever heard of Keytruda. And it was interesting because sometimes you get surprised. There was a lady at one of our orientations who stood up and looked at me and said, I know all about Keytruda. My partner is taking it right now and it's saving his life. And I looked at her and I was just going, really? And in the end, you just never know how this is going to go ahead and affect certain individuals. But we wanted to make sure people understood they weren't just coming to a site to build bricks and also put in pipe. They were going to go ahead and be here to really, really save people's lives. So again, to this, the clarity of the project objectives. We had signs up everywhere, and you see them on the right-hand side there. Priority for the project, safety first, quality always. We talked about schedule, but cost was value for money. It wasn't low cost. We were looking for value for money. And we wanted to make sure people knew that in the end, they all had the right to stop the work. We wanted to make sure we got their best effort when it came to quality, but we put this up so people knew we were serious about going ahead and making sure it was safety first and quality always. So again, we had the objectives formally ranked, which went ahead and helped clarify it for people to go ahead and know how serious we were about it. The project leadership communicated and lived this message. And also it provided clarity for everyone coming to the site. We didn't want to make sure we had any mixed messages at all about what was important to us. It was important for us to get people home safe. And we can talk about metrics and everything else like that, but the overriding message to everybody on the site was, we want you to work here, but we want you to go home safe. And that's really what we ended up going ahead and putting out there for people to know. So safety commitment. We knew to achieve world-class safety performance, we needed to go beyond technology and systems. We didn't want safety managers. We wanted safety leaders. We wanted people to inspire each other to go ahead and do better with safety. And that's why I hate having people call them safety managers. They were not. They were safety leaders. And in the end, it went ahead and inspired people to go ahead and do better than they ever had done before. The supervisors needed trades to work safely for their own safety, health, and well-being, as well as the workers around them. We also wanted people to look at the people working around them to go ahead and make sure that they were working safe too. Again, walk the talk. You got to go ahead and have the ethics behind the message also. And develop a safety culture that's open, interactive, and promotes inclusion and feedback. We wanted people to tell us where we could do better. And once they did tell us, we had the systems in place and put the money in place to make sure it happened. So integrity, and we told people this, we want you to work safe even when no one is watching. And that really gets back to doing the right thing and doing the right thing every time. And it did permeate a culture where people were asking questions like, are you really serious about this? And by the end of the job, they knew how serious we were about it. So you create a solution that's more likely to be accepted and followed by the project team members. So we wanted those solutions to be owned by everybody. And the vision was a culture of safer working environment for all employees, improving communication about safety throughout the organization, and the elimination of hazards, injuries, and incidents. Our first deal was not to go ahead and do high-risk work. We wanted to eliminate the hazard before it ever got started. So before anybody signed a high-risk work permit, we asked the question, is there a better way to go ahead and do this? So just as important, involving representatives from a cross-section of disciplines throughout the program sent a very clear message. One thing we did that was interesting that a lot of people had never seen done before is we had pipe fitters going to an electrician's toolbox talk. We had carpenters going to a pipe fitter toolbox talk. We cross-pollinated all the crafts to go ahead and make sure that they were hearing the same message in all the different toolbox talks. The other thing that we did that was really successful was we had a monthly safety meeting that we required every managing director to go ahead and come to. And during that meeting, we had them come in the morning. We wanted them to do a safety audit. And then we wanted them to go ahead and bring what they found to the meeting so we could talk about how do we go ahead and get better. But it got the managing directors really involved with what was going on in the field. And each meeting, each month, we had a different managing director run the meeting. So it wasn't us putting presentations up. We wanted them to be intimately involved with what was going on the job. And again, safety wasn't just a program-driven priority, but a true personal value within the organization. And we looked at safety as a value. It's not a priority, because safety, values never change. Priorities change, but values don't. And safety and quality for us were values. So a recipe, and I'm not going to go over all of this for this, but this will give you a quick idea of how we used at the top safety tap-ins, SORs, investigate and learn from incidents and trends. That fed back into the behavioral safety, the boots on the ground, and the sharing the lessons learned, getting back to the results of where you were at. So we had all these things going on that kept feeding back into the different funnels on how we got to the point where we did win the Excellence Award. And we also, the EMEA AP region, had the best portfolio projects from 2017 to 2019. So by using this slide, we try to get people to understand that we really wanted to go ahead and keep bringing the culture into a point where we kept funneling it, where all the teams learned and all the people shared those best practices. One other thing with this slide, and I always wanted people to go ahead and understand this, you know, the Merck team had a safety vision. The CMs had a safety division, and there was strong alignment if you look at this arrow here between Merck and the site. Merck had a message that went to the craft too, and the CMs had a message that went to the craft. But this line of communication here from the contractors, their managing directors and supervisors, we knew was the one we really had to focus on. So these two red lines here, the CMs worked with the supervisors, we worked with the supervisors to make sure these three messages were all aligned going to the craft, and the craft heard the same message. We wanted to make sure the craft heard that we wanted to go ahead and have their best safety effort, and we wanted them to do the job right the first time. Whether or not it was done that day or whether or not we were over budget, that never got down to the craft. The craft heard that we wanted them to work safe and we wanted their best effort to go ahead and do a quality installation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about quality, but does anybody have anything they want to ask me about the safety part of the job? Did it make sense? Just real quick. Well, if not, we can save those questions for after later. But also too, on the quality side for the job, we knew the business objective. It was 600 kilograms of Keytruda by 2020. A dose of Keytruda, or actually a treatment for Keytruda, was about 6 grams. So we had to go ahead and provide 600 kilograms of Keytruda to go ahead and make sure that we could go ahead and meet supply. We had complete executive sponsorship for what we were trying to do to meet this business objective. So the strategic plan, we aligned on the definition of what we wanted, communicated the commitment to defect-free delivery, construction with project stakeholders at AECM and trade partners. We did not want anything to sit more than a couple hours as far as getting definition on it. That includes RFIs, that include everything. We put out there that we wanted all RFIs answered within an hour. And I mean, in the end, it just set the bar so high that people really, really wanted to go ahead and make sure we got requests for information as soon as we could. And that was part of that strategic plan. So we developed the BOD to meet the business objective. We put out in front of people very early, no change that affects the business objective post BOD approval. We kept changes to a minimum. And in the end, that kept people focused on getting the project done and getting it done on time. Zero defects. We did a lot of inspections during construction. And we had a test plan that basically we went and we tested as we went. We didn't save anything for the end. And if something needed to be repaired or if something was still outstanding, we pushed to get it defined and get it done complete. Before we ever got to the punch down or the punch list, we were fixing things to make sure we had it done correctly. So we had a clear responsibility of that defect-free system from design to construction. We ensured that it's communicated to appropriate level of importance and new project members at the project induction. We were talking about quality at the project induction. Ownership, again, by everybody, right down to the person putting the actual installation in. Implementing continuous quality inspections on systems with quality reports that basically we had non-compliance records, communicated quality breaches. And to be honest, there was continuous monitoring and reporting of quality deviations and metrics. We wanted to have all of this visible so people knew that we were serious about getting it right the first time. RFI answering process and quality board in the field. We also had quality SOR cards, so it's a quality observation card. We wanted to know if people saw something from a quality standpoint that really needed attention. We wanted to spend the time to getting it right. And again, the grade performance of the project stakeholders ensure that the influences the award of future projects. We wanted to grade them on how they were doing on quality and safety because we wanted them to understand how serious we were about getting it right the first time.
Hey, Chris, I
Yes.
have a quick question for you.
Go ahead.
What does BOD stand for?
Basis of design.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Any other quick questions? Okay. So if you looked at it, we always had these boards up to make sure people knew. On this particular project, we had about 1,500, 1,600 systems that had to go ahead and be completed. So we always knew if we had 663 or 775, we wanted people to know about the number of punches raised at W3. And just to be very quickly about it, W1 walk down was the contractor doing his walk down. W2 is when the contractor does it with the construction manager. And by W3, when the owner participates in a walk down, we wanted 0 punches for each of the different systems as we walked it down. And that means 0 defects. There weren't any things to fix. And a third of our systems had 0 defects at W3, which helped us to go faster because, I mean, in the end, a similar project that was done over on the other side of Dublin, almost the same size by another pharma company, ended up with 35,000 punch list items at the end of the job. which ended up being almost another project just in itself. So we knew the total number of contractor punches. We wanted to go and make sure the contractors knew how many punches that they had outstanding. Total number of systems with 0 defects, again, 30%. So out of the 663, 191 had 0 defects. And again, we always talk about the number of systems less than 5 punches. That was 487 of them. 74% had less than 5 punch list items. So the effort to make safety first, quality always, reap the benefits at the end of the job. And again, it was spending the money up front rather than trying to clear a 35,000 punch list item at the end of the job. So again, every day we would go ahead and you can see the number of punches raised, the number of punches closed is the blue line, and the yellow line is the number of MCs. And you can see the progress as we went through. We wanted to make sure that we documented how many punches were open, how many punches were raised, and again, how many MCs were completed each and every week. And we had this posted all around the job site so they could see what we were trying to do. The other thing that was really, really good for us, during the MD meetings that I talked about earlier, where the managing directors would come to the site, we would put this up and it would tell each of the different contractors that were working out there how many open punch list items they had that week and how many were over 14 days and not being closed. And the one thing we wanted to do is make sure everybody knew where they stood, and nobody wanted to be at the top of this list. So in the end, it really drove people to go ahead and keep working on getting the punch list cleared before we ever got to that walk down 3 where the owner participated. But it really sent a strong message to all the contractors to do their best work and do it safely. So again, we wanted to act, we wanted to plan, do, check, and then act. And we don't let circumstances dictate that commitment to safety, whether that circumstance is the pandemic, schedule, cost, other pressures. We wanted people to go ahead and understand we wanted them to go ahead and keep safety and quality first. Keep the other pressures out from the guys in the field, because in the end, they didn't need to know what was going on the schedule and cost part of it. They needed to do it right the first time and do it safely. And then at the end of the project, or even during the project, and I wanted to spend a little time talking about this, we really put a lot of emphasis on knowledge transfer. And knowledge transfer throughout the job was so important to us, because what we wanted to do is get that knowledge and the ways of working with the project planning, the delivery. What did we learn? And we kept feeding it back into the middle here to go ahead and make sure that we had key lessons learned captured. And then the project team and members developed that result, of all the lessons learned, the knowledge and the key lessons learned. That's the K and KL. But we really put an emphasis on making sure we shared lessons learned all the way through the project. So it was something that really helped us get better as we were going ahead and doing things. And just a quick idea, we put this together, from initiation standpoint, design, procurement, for each of the different disciplines, things that we wanted to start doing. And then we saw the things that we wanted to continue doing. And then we looked at what we wanted to stop. We didn't want to go ahead and rethink, we really wanted to go ahead and really look at how we initiated this right. Metrics, but build on them. How are we going to go ahead and improve? The design phase, we looked at how we went ahead and changed, no change of MSD requirements post BOD. EPCM understanding the MSD standards and SNs, and that's our safety absolutes that we basically said we were never going to compromise. just some examples. And again, procurement. Then you were looking at what we were doing during factory acceptance testing. What are things that we were going to go ahead and stop doing, what we were going to rethink, what we were going to improve, what we were going to start doing. How could we go ahead and do better? And this was developed all the way through the job. And again, construction, all fed back down construction, and then also even in turnover. We wanted that knowledge to go ahead and keep going, permeate throughout the whole process, so people could see more of the different things that were happening in all the other different disciplines. That's pretty much the presentation. I didn't want to really get into the technical side. I wanted to get more into that soft side. How do you go ahead and create the atmosphere and inspire people to do their best work? And I think we really did that in Dublin by going ahead and making sure messages were very clear and communicated correctly. I've always said this about project work. For the upper management people and people in leadership, their job is 90% communication and 10% technical. It's awful easy to go ahead and see a person's technical capabilities on a resume, but their communication skills, their leadership skills are even more important on a mega project, that the message is basically concise and it's consistent and you don't change it day to day. And that really gets you back to really being committed to a certain set of core values. And that core value for us were basically safety and quality. So now we'll go and ask and see if we got any questions. Rana?
Great. Yes, thank you, Chris. I do have some questions that have been sent to me. The first is, Chris is sharing some amazing culture and results. I'm curious as to what methods and tools were used to support the visibility and expediency, as in the 1 hour RFI turnaround, Merck was able to achieve.
We ended up on a weekly basis. We would go ahead and have a meeting with the leadership team, and like the RFIs, we went over the status of that weekly. And everybody knew that in the end, we were going to go ahead and see the results that we wanted. And if we saw RFIs going over, a couple hours, I think we ended up averaging right at 2 hours, but we set the bar really high at 1 hour. And that's why having the designers in the field so the construction guys could get their RFIs answered really quickly, in the end, really helped spur the project on, because things didn't linger. We didn't let things sit very long. So there were weekly meetings. We also had RFI boards out in the hallway so people could see what was happening with that. And it was drip fed a lot throughout the project. So that's really how we did the culture too. It was a complete drip feed all the time. And people would go ahead and see how serious we were about getting this right. The schedule and cost part was also out there, and people knew about the schedule and cost. And to be honest, when we first started, and I remember during the concept phase, we had outside agencies go ahead and take a look at our schedule and give us an analysis of what they thought our chances were of getting done in 2 years. And what they told us was it was a 0% chance. Wasn't going to happen. And in the end, I remember looking at the person, I'm saying, well, it might not be zero. We have a pretty strong team here. I think we're going to go ahead and probably change how you look at this. And he was stunned when he came back at the end of 2 years to really see where we were. He was stunned. And it was all about the culture that really got us to where we were going.
That's great. I have a follow-up that goes with that. Regarding the RFIs being answered within an hour, was there any pushback on that?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And how did you handle that pushback?
Well, we were told we were crazy. And I mean, in the end, I can remember the conversations and we got a lot of lip service about it. And I said, look, we're setting the bar here. We will go ahead and support you. If you need people to go ahead and help you with getting this to an hour, we'll add people. And it was the same way with safety, because we knew we were going to spend somewhere around 4 million man hours. And people were telling us, well, yeah, we're going to say zero harm, but you're not going to do a job with zero harm with 4 million man hours. It's just not going to happen. And when you looked at the makeup of the construction crew, and like I said, we peaked at about 1,800 guys in the field. They were from at least 15 different countries, at least 12 or 13 different languages being spoken on the project. So there was a lot of hurdles just with culture too, and getting people to understand where we were going with the job. But we put the resources to it to make sure that we could be successful. And basically in the end, like I said, we set the bar so high that in the end, people just really got on board and said, wow, this is actually happening. This is amazing. And that was just infectious. It really was.
All right, this is a two-parter question for you.
Okay.
When developing your safety first, quality always mantra, how did you get that message to resonate with the subcontractors?
Good question. For the contractors, during the bid phase, and normally you would go ahead and you would send out all the safety expectations in the bid documents and everything like that. I made it a point to attend every bid meeting, and the first half hour was talking nothing but safety, and what the expectations were and what we were really looking for. And coming out of the meeting, I had so many contractors just look at me and say, I've never had anybody talk to me about safety like that. And they said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to support you on everything we do. So we started right. We didn't have to shift gears by the time it got to the field. Everybody knew what the expectation was long before they ever got to the job. And that just permeated all the way through the job. So it starts out with getting it right at the bid stage. And I will say this too, we didn't take low bidder. We looked at all of the bids when they came in, but we picked the best value for money. And I kept telling people this, the best value for money is not necessarily low bidder. So we knew the people who were going to be committed to safety and quality too. And those were the contractors we ended up working with.
Okay, so you kind of answered the second part, but I'm going to state it anyway, just in case there's some additional comments you want to add, okay?
Okay.
Were there specific steps that you took in the bidding phases or early construction to engage subcontractors in developing your safety strategy?
We did. And to be honest, one of the things that, and I know that in the end, I had a couple guys that were working with me too, on the quality and safety side out in the field. One thing that we did was usually I was in by 6:30 in the morning, and I made it a point to stop in a contractor's gang shack to go ahead and talk with the supervisors and everything and really set the pace for the day. But I wanted them to know that in the end, we were coming to them with this, not them coming to us. And that just got to a point where all of a sudden, people knew exactly who all the different people were. One other thing I'll say too, my sister is a 10-year survivor of breast cancer. And she gave me a pink hard hat. So when I'm out on the job site, I'm wearing this pink hard hat. And when you've got construction workers looking at you, trying to figure out what's going on with this pink hard hat. And it was amazing because it just got conversation started. And I would tell them about my sister. And so many people during the job were asking me about how she was doing. And it just got to a point where it was a different conversation than just about construction. It was a personal deal that basically people were able to talk about. And I think that changed how people looked at it also. We were interested in what each other's problems were, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Makes sense. Got some more questions for you. Was this a
Okay.
union or a non-union project?
In Ireland, the unions are basically implemented by the state. So it's a government union. It's not like you have locals or anything else like that. It's more through the government. So the wages and everything else like that are all monitored by the government. And you have to go ahead and work with the government as far as the unions go. It's union in the fact that it's government regulated, and it wasn't like you were going to set wages or anything. That was already all set. So, but it's not like you were dealing with a local and all the locals had different wages and everything else like that. It was pretty much standard for the whole country.
Did you run into any concerns? I hate to use the word issues with using with the government regarding the project.
We had a person, and he was there on the site, and his job was doing nothing but making sure the contractors were paying all the amounts of money they were supposed to the government, because there's things that with the wages get funded and everything else like that. So his job was to make sure that everything went well with that. And he did a fantastic job. We didn't have one issue when you went back and looked at it. And in the end, one of the things that's interesting over in Ireland, when you pay these dues to the government, they send out to your construction sites trailers with nurses in it various times during the job to check guys' blood pressure, to check their cholesterol, to go ahead and do a health check, you know, and it's all free because it's all part of what they do with the wages and everything and how the union works in Ireland. And it's really great because a lot of guys never had a chance to get to a doctor. And we did have people that had high blood pressure and high cholesterol that got referred to doctors to go ahead and make sure that they got the care they needed also. But that was another big deal that I thought was really interesting, is to go ahead and have that, just come to your job site, and they set up trailers, nurses, everything would be right there, and the guys could get checked during the day. Usually they would be there for about 2 weeks, you know, but on the major sites, it was all done through the government, all done, you know, and paid for by the dues that come out of the people's wages.
What percentage of TIC budget was spent on engineering?
Oh, we had a little bit more probably than normal because we had all the designers at the site. So you also had to go ahead and pay for them being at the site. So hotel bills, different things like that. There was a little bit more spent just on the soft cost side versus just a true engineering side. I can't give you a precise figure. It was somewhere probably in the neighborhood of 20 to 25%, because we had huge material costs. I mean, the bioreactors and everything else like that were very expensive. Shipping costs, you know, if you look at the job was a lot of equipment cost. It really was. You know, I mean, the actual building costs weren't even as much as what the equipment costs were when you looked at the final numbers. Does that answer the question, I guess?
If it didn't, if the person who sent that to me, if you would go ahead and send me another message, let me know. So we'll move on in the meantime. How far along was the design before you mobilized construction? And how much time did you allow for Merck and the CM to align and structure the execution in planning before engaging tiered trade partners?
Okay. We got basically I can tell you this, we had an existing building that we had to do a lot of demo work on. So even during the BOD phase, we were on site with contractors. Now, in the end, we had an existing slab that had to come up. We had a lot of demo work to do. We had equipment that had to come out, old equipment that had to go ahead and be disposed of. We had a huge, huge project just to go ahead and get the demo work done. So to be honest, when design started, we were already in the field. So some of the contractors that we were going to use in the early stages of the project were also the contractors that we had on site already. So there was some that had to come, you know, like our piling people and everything else like that got a real early start. We got that design done. So we over designed the piles so we could go ahead and get really started in the field. But to be honest, the design was about one step ahead of construction when you looked at it. And we picked the contractors, we bid everything on a unit rate. So basically, we gave them what we thought the units were going to be, lineal feet of pipe, number of welds. You know, if you look at, you know, the cable, it was lineal meters of piping or cable tray. Everything was done with units. And then basically in the end, they gave us a unit price that we negotiated out. And then we had quantity surveyors in the field, always looking to making sure the quantities were right. So it became a lump sum in the end because you had all the units and you had the unit rate. So it became just a math deal, but it was a little bit different than looking at a scope of work. Their scope of work were unit rates, if that makes sense. That's the way the job was structured.
And I have one last question for you before we go back into our general session. It is, was this a lean incentive-based contract project?
It was lean, and we had a professional lean person there working with the contractors. We had lean meetings every week. It was all about how do we go ahead and pull the design to go ahead and feed the contractors what they needed to be successful. And I mean, it really, really, really worked well. The guy who was there for lean did a fantastic job to go ahead and help us with this. On the incentives, we had some money set aside for incentives to go ahead and put together. The incentives were more around schedule than they were safety and quality. We wanted safety and quality to go ahead and be non-negotiable. We didn't want anybody cutting corners or anything else like that. So we incentivized certain schedule dates. But to be honest, everybody was so focused on getting the project done, we met almost every schedule target we put out there anyway. So, I mean, getting the safety and the quality right made us more productive, made us more efficient in the end. And I can't keep stressing that enough because in the end, we always say, how do you get good schedule and cost? Well, you do it by being involved in safety and quality throughout the job and not letting things wait until the end of the job to be fixed.
And let's see, sorry, there is one other question I'm going to try and slide in here, okay? Just to clarify, the project spent 25% of TIC just for engineering DWGs, excluding the engineering, the equipment suppliers include in their sales price?
It was about 100 million in design costs. So 100 million out of 900 million, I guess it's not 20%. Okay. It was about 100 million for design when you go ahead and look at it.
And actually, I'm going to go back to the lean question,
Sure.
A follow-up on that. Did you find that you needed to educate the majority of the people on the site as to lean practices, or was it fairly well known?
Absolutely. It was a complete education process, getting people up to speed with it. And we had a lot of non-believers at the start of the project. You know, why are we doing this? We don't normally do this. And when you talk about contractors and everything else, something new is always suspect, no matter what it is. Even if it's for your own good, it's suspect because it's new. So you got to really work with them to go ahead and change that culture. And they really did. They saw the benefit of the pipe fitters knowing what the electricians were doing and what was important to the electricians. They saw that in the end, it was in their interest to go ahead and actually see a different picture and a bigger picture of what was going on. So, but at first, a lot of resistance. And like I said, with most people, change comes hard. It's never easy, but sometimes you have to just keep pushing the issue, and people then find out, you know, that it is for their own good. And I will say one thing for safety too. When you're doing safety, and people will go ahead and you will say that you want to go ahead and have them do this program, and you're going to have to, you know, purchase this piece of equipment. Everybody sees the dollar signs, but they don't see the benefit until after they see it in practice. And once it's in practice, then they see what the benefit was and why it was important for them to change. But sometimes you just have to keep nudging them in the direction you want them to go, because in the end, they'll see that it was in their best interest to start.
Okay, and Chris, thank you. I want everyone to know that I have posted in the chat box the link that will take you back to the general session so that you can hear our closing speaker. And also, I took the liberty of putting in Chris's email at work so that if you have any additional questions for Chris, you can direct those to him. And thanks, Chris, for allowing me to do that. And thanks also, Chris, for your time, the energy that you put into a very successful project. And thank you for sharing it with us.
One other comment.
Yes.
On the design side too, while we had 400 guys on the site working on design, we also were doing design in Cincinnati at the Jacobs office, and we were doing design in India at the Jacobs office. We were doing design 24 hours a day. So there was people working in Ireland, they would hand off to the people in Cincinnati, the Cincinnati people would hand off to the people in India. And it was a 24-hour-a-day design effort too. So you got to look at this. It was a very, very condensed design phase of this job. We were really pushing people hard to go ahead and feed that construction so we could go ahead and keep it going on how we were going to go ahead and get this done in 2 years. It wasn't really a standard design package by any means. It was a lot of work to get it done.
It took a village, but you were successful, and that's what's important here.
That's correct.
And based on the drug itself, it sounds like it definitely was warranted and appreciated by quite a few people.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you all.